Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show, and call our listener line and leave a message for our guests. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show.
Thanks for joining us for the Long Island Sound podcast. Each week we explore new music and dive deeper with the artists and their stories behind the music. Please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you stream this podcast. Here's your host, Steve Yusko.
You are in store for a great episode. I had a fantastic roller coaster ride conversation with Mary Lamont, queen of Long Island country music. We went from Alice Cooper to Anne Murray. She has some fantastic connections through her career and some really great music. Have a listen to Not Far From Here.
The phone was ringing. You said, hey, what you doing? I'm just sitting here singing. You invited me over, said, let's have some fun doing nothing. And I said, where's the party? Where's the fire? And you said, not far from here. Not far from here. I got into my car and I'm driving kind of slow. But the more I drove and thought about you, the more I lost control. Siren getting louder and louder. I pulled over and the cop said, where's the party, where's the fire? And I said, not far from here. Not far from here. Just down the road, not too far from here. It's been too long, but it's so clear. It's not far from here. It's not far from here. Not far from here. You're not far from here. Oh, 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 oh. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Mary Lamont is my guest today, known as the Queen of Long Island Country. Her catalog of country music has made an impact on the Long Island sound. Performing throughout the island, Mary's band has opened for Delbert McClinton, Marshall Tucker Band, and the Charles Daniels Band. As host of the long-running radio show Down Home Country, alternate Sundays on WUSB 90.1 FM, Mary has consistently kept country music on the Long Island airwaves. And with that, I say welcome to the Long Island Sound Podcast, Mary. Good to have you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for having me. This will be really fun.
I got to tell you a quick story. So we were talking offline about my wife being a big country music fan, and I love country music as well. And she used to have a butcher shop in Massapequa Park, and they listened to country all day long, you know, when it was on popular radio stations. And then it disappeared from Long Island, and she was like horrified, you know, until the internet came along. But I'm glad you're keeping, I mean it, I'm glad you're keeping country music alive on the university radio station. So.
Well, thank you. I have so much fun with that show. I've been doing it for the past 11 years. I'm up to about 225 shows.
Wow.
I can't believe it. But it's really fun because at WUSB, out of Stony Brook University, we can play just about anything we want. So we're not set to, you have to do top 40 or you have to do this type of thing, which is really thrilling because putting together a show every week is the next adventure. It's really great.
Yeah, it's interesting with technology, and I think this is the bane of technology, is you have all this artificial intelligence telling you, well, if you like this, you're going to like that. You're going to like this, you're going to like that. And you get put in guardrails. And I'm just the opposite. As I get older, I don't want to be reminiscing about too many things that I've known in my past. I want to hear some new stuff. No matter what the genre is, I want to explore that. That's why we have the podcast. But I got to ask you this. When you first sat in that DJ booth, how was it for you? Did you take to it like a fish to water, or was it a process?
It was pretty easy. The lady who I shared alternate shows with at that time, Debbie DeWaltoff, who had done the show for about 30 years. She was very helpful in showing me the board and telling me the ins and outs of, how to operate the equipment and what I should do at the half hour, station IDs and all that. But we really didn't get into operating the CD player, which was a little bit different from your regular home CD player.
Okay.
So that was I was a little apprehensive the first time I went on, and Charlie Backfish is on with his show just before Down Home Country. And I turned to Jim and I said, I am literally jumping off a cliff. And I walked in and Charlie was just finishing up his show. And then he put on the first song of my show. And I said, Charlie, would you be able to show me quickly how to use the CD player? Because I don't know how to use it. He turned to me and he said, you're kidding. I said, no, I'm not. And so he quickly showed me how to run it. And I'm pretty good technically. So I kind of jumped in and jumped off the cliff and really had a ball with it. And it's been fun ever since.
That's great. Hey, let's turn the page and go back. I'm always interested when I speak to artists about that time in your life when either you've picked up an instrument or you said to yourself, hey, I want to be a songwriter, or I can do this. When did that happen for you, Mary?
Well, it really started when I was very little and I was singing around the house. And I am from southwestern Ontario. I probably have a bit of an accent left, although I've been down here for a long time.
Right.
But my dad said, you can sing. You're going into the church choir. And my first reaction was, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he says, yes, you can. I'm going over there right now. And the church was right next door. And he said, and I'm going to tell him that you should join the choir. So I went to the first practice and I loved it. And I got to sing harmonies. And it was great because when I was a little kid, I used to beg my friends to sing songs so I could sing harmony to it. I mean, I just love that. And so I got into the choir and then I started singing solos and I was scared to death, but you're a little kid, you do what you're supposed to do. And I loved it. And so I've been very actually fortunate that I've had two men in my life who have pushed me to do things that I wouldn't ordinarily do on my own. Right. And that was my father and my husband. Our band would not even exist if it weren't for Jim. Wow. But anyway, going back to my father, I was interested in playing the piano. My friends were taking piano lessons and I would fool around with, their piano while I was waiting for them to get ready for school. And so I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I'd really like to learn the piano. And he says, oh, great. Okay, well, we can get you we can find a used piano somewhere. And, wow. And he was all for it. And then something happened and he turned around and he says, you know what, we can't do this. And so I just accepted it. I never questioned why he had done it. And years later, after my mother had passed away, it turned out that my mother had taken piano lessons when she was little and she hated it. Oh. And she didn't want to see me go through that same kind of
interesting
experience. So she was the one who kind of put a stop to it. And, she had her intentions were good, but I'm a different person.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought, well, that was really sweet of her not to want me to go through a bad experience. But, I kind of missed that. I thought, gee, I wish I had done that. Well, a little time went by and I went to my dad and I said, I'd really like to learn how to play the bagpipes because we were Scottish-Irish descent. Okay. And I thought, wow, that'd be really cool. Right. So this time he didn't ask my mother. He went to, my dad was the town doctor. Okay. When they charged $3 for an office visit and $5 for a house call. And so he called one of his patients who was a farmer who had a pipe and drum band. Okay. And also gave lessons. This, elderly, he must have been at about, I guess, in his 60s. Okay. And so he says, my daughter wants to take bagpipe lessons. So this guy found me a used set of pipes. Wow. And I started out and now my mother had to drive me on a dirt road for miles into the 7th concession and to this man's farmhouse. And I would sit there and I was 10 at the time. Okay. And he taught me how to play bagpipes and I just loved it. And, my friends would actually make fun of me because basically you look kind of weird when you're playing the bagpipes. Sure. But I used to practice in the backyard and, and learned a lot of the traditional Scottish songs for pipes. And my favorite one was Flowers of the Forest. And my grandfather, one of his requests was that I play Flowers of the Forest at his funeral. But unfortunately, I was not that far along in the lessons at that point, right. So I wasn't able to do it. But whenever I hear Flowers of the Forest, I think of him. But
that's great.
Anyway, the farmer told me that I was his best student and that he wanted me to join his band. Wow. And I was afraid to join the band. I never did because I thought, what if I make a mistake?
Wow. Interesting.
So I never did it. I mean, this is, Mary, like stepping back and saying, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Right.
And so we ended up moving to the United States, and eventually the bagpipes went into the closet because kids were just making fun of me. And by 8th grade, I'd had it, and they sold the pipes.
Right.
So we ended up moving to Long Island. My dad got a position at Stony Brook University.
Okay. Wow.
Being a medical professor. He had started teaching we moved from the little town to a city, London, Ontario.
I'm very familiar.
And my dad had a job at the university there. And then from there, somebody heard him speak out in California and recommended him for a professorship at the new Stony Brook School of Medicine.
Wow.
So he said, wow, this would be really great. We got to move to Long Island. So we moved to Long Island, and I ended up going into the city to pursue a modeling career, which was completely insane for me to do. I wanted to be a fashion model, but I decided that I wasn't getting any work.
Right.
So I better figure something else out. So I did get some work with some photographers dressing up in turn of the century costuming and posing, kind of like an acting job in a way, for dime store novels, romantic novels.
Wow.
And it was really funny. I walked into a dime store one day in the city, like months later, and actually saw myself on a couple of the covers of these, romance novels. It was pretty funny. I still have one of them.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, but there wasn't enough work. So I had made friends with several models who lived in the same apartment building. I was sharing an apartment with 2 other girls, and one of them was working for Alice Cooper's management, doing their fan club.
Okay.
So I would, in the evenings, several of us would all sit around. We'd be stuffing envelopes for the Alice Cooper fan club, and I got a job. I went in and got a job at Lord & Taylor as a salesperson, and was there for a few months until my feet were just killing me. I couldn't stand it anymore. Sure. So I called my friend who was doing the Alice Cooper fan club, and I said, Susie, I just can't do this anymore. I'm going to find another job. And she says, oh, you know what? Alice Cooper's management is looking for a receptionist.
Oh, come on. Wow.
I said, oh my God, give me the number. This was so incredible, because back in Canada, when I was in high school, the first live band I ever saw was Alice Cooper.
Oh, amazing.
And I saw it in a small venue, and I just loved them. So this was like, oh my God, give me the number. I went on the interview. There's this girl slouched down in a seat, and she says, so can you type? And I said, not really that well. And she says, that's okay, neither can I.
Wow.
So she said, when could you start?
Oh my God.
And so I started that Monday, and I was there for 2 years and got to know the guys in the band, and, all the roadies and everything who would come in and bring the snakes into the office. And it was completely wild, but I learned so much there.
Oh, I can imagine.
I learned office protocol. I learned how to handle a difficult person on the phone, how to handle difficult people when they came in.
Right, sure.
And I once had a lady from a teen magazine come in. She was supposed to meet with the manager who wasn't there, and she used the phone on my desk to call someone saying that the meeting wasn't going to happen, and she threw the phone at me.
Oh, geez. Wow.
But working working there was really, really fun. And Shep Gordon was the manager, and he and also Joe Greenberg. The two of them were co-managers of Alice Cooper Band, and they were just terrific to work with. And at the same time, they were managing Anne Murray.
Wow. Another Canadian, right? Yeah.
So that was kind of odd, but really fun. And so I was there for 2 years, as I said. And at the end of 2 years, they were moving the office to California. So I wasn't really in a position to run off to California at that point.
Sure.
So I thought, well, I'll find a different job. And Anne Murray's office up in Toronto said, oh, Mary, we hear that you're not moving out with them, so maybe you'd like to come up to Toronto and work with Anne. So, but I wasn't really in a position. I didn't really want to leave New York.
Right, sure.
I really loved the city. So I decided to stay there, and I looked for another job. It would have been a booking agency. I learned all about contracts, but they had Commodores, they had the Good Rats.
Oh, yeah.
William Shatner doing college speaking engagements, James Cotton, the James Cotton Band. I regret that I never met him. Kool and the Gang. I used to type Blondie.
Right.
Okay, I used to take contracts for Blondie, but something wrong was going on when James Cotton would call up and say, hey, I did my gig. I want my money.
Oh, yeah. That's a big sign, yeah.
I think I need to get out of here.
Hey, Mary, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk about your experience at Crawdaddy magazine. At the Long Island Sound, we're much more than a podcast. We're building a community. Please go to gigdestiny.com, check out all our social media links, subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Please comment, call the listener line, tell us what you think, what questions we should ask, who we should have on the show. And most of all, we thank you for your generous support. And remember, support the artists who are guests on the show. Now back to the podcast.
So I left there and I got a job at Crawdaddy magazine. Okay, so now I'm working for a magazine. I've done management, booking, and music publication. So I thought, and I'm learning all of
what an apprenticeship, really, when you think about it.
The music business, So this is really fantastic. And so I'm at Crawdaddy for a couple of years, and I loved it there. And I started working for their advertising department besides being the receptionist, and, met a lot of people and, got to know people at record companies, and the writers there were so talented. Mitch Glazer, who of course went on to be a big writer in Hollywood, and Peter Nobler ran Crawdaddy, and he's since done several books on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and others. In fact, I transcribed tapes for him, doing 24 90-minute tapes of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar talking about his life. That was fascinating.
Wow.
And John Perellis. John Perellis went on to be the head of the music department at the New York Times. Timothy White went on to become the head of Billboard. He's unfortunately passed away. That was another whole adventure, going to his wake and meeting Phoebe Snow in the ladies' room, who sang there.
Wow.
The late Phoebe Snow. And then from there, I went to another booking agency, and they had a lot of acts, a lot of Vegas acts. Tony Bennett, Vic Damone, Peggy Lee, Liberace. I got to know Liberace.
Amazing.
Rodney Dangerfield, Steve Martin, Earl Scruggs, Johnny Cash. Who else? Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin brothers. So there's country.
Wow.
So the person I was working directly for there was the bass player of the Fenderman.
Okay.
Who's big hit was Mule Skinner Blues.
Okay.
But he had become a booking agent. So I learned all about booking directly from him, and I'm sitting right outside his office. So I'm hearing all of the conversations going on, and got to be really good friends on the phone with Louise Scruggs, Earl Scruggs' wife, who was his manager and was a very smart lady. And you really had to prove yourself before she would,
take you in.
let into her circle. But I adored her. She was great.
Wow.
So I collected those contracts, got the promoters to sign them, and she really liked that. and got to meet Earl and Louise and the Sons, who, they had a band with the Sons. So where did we go from there? Jim and I ended up getting married. Jim got a phone call one day from Jim's a professional photographer. Got a phone call one day from someone he had known in the photography business, who he hadn't spoken with in a while. And he said, and they had done assignments together. And he said, I'm calling from Berlin, West Germany, and I am now road manager for Bruce Springsteen.
Come on.
And,
wow.
Yeah. And he says, Bruce has just decided that he wants a tour photographer. And he says, I know other photographers, but he doesn't want a music photographer. And you're the only person I know who can keep up with Bruce. How quickly can you get here?
Oh my God.
So then Jim went down to the customs department, registered all his equipment, bought a ton of bricks of film. Remember film?
I sure do. Yep.
81, and went off to Europe to tour with Bruce Springsteen.
Amazing.
And was there for, I guess, the better part of a month. And then I met up with him at the end of the tour. So we had this, nice little vacation in London. And then he came back, and I was helping him with his business, sometimes taking his portfolio to clients. And but ultimately, where did we go from there? Oh, we got married.
A little milestone.
Yeah, a little milestone. And then we had this wonderful little boy. And we decided around the time that he was 2 that we needed a backyard.
Right.
So we moved out to Long Island, and then Jim had actually bought a guitar in the city.
Okay.
And he had started to play around a bit out here. We met a neighbor who was a musician, and he said, why don't you come down to this jam that's happening? So Jim started to go to jams, and meanwhile, I'm still singing around the house like I was when I was, a little kid. And Jim said, we need a band. You need to be lead singer of a band. And I said, no, I can't do that.
Right.
Once again, somebody pushing me into something that ultimately I love.
Wow.
So thank you, Dad, and thank you, Jim. So Jim started to play a little bit more guitar, and we found when we did country songs that it just kind of fit better than, as much as we loved rock and roll. And I mean, I was a huge punk music fan and everything growing up. The country just seemed to fit us both. So Jim went out to these jams, and he found, musicians, and we started rehearsing and put a band together, and he got on the phone, and Jim on the phone persuading people to hire somebody who nobody ever had seen before. He did it.
Wow.
And our first gig was at Matty T's in Deer Park, which was the place for country music on Long Island. So that was a bit, tense, but we just went from there and started to get more and more gigs and just built it up. And then we were playing at Jones Beach Bandshell every year, and it was a real fun adventure, and the adventure continues.
Well, I gotta tell you, Mary, my head is spinning. coming into this interview, if you had told me the roadmap would be from bagpipes to Alice Cooper to Bruce Springsteen to all the people, you're just blowing me away here. It's just an amazing ride, and you know. I'm sorry.
It has been an amazing ride, and it just continues like that. And and when we got out here, so we're playing covers.
Sure.
Okay, we're doing all country covers of traditional and and current country at the time, and so I called the guy who I worked for at the second booking agency, who was the bass player from the Fenderman,
right,
and, responsible agent for Earl Scruggs and everything. And he says, I want to come and hear you sing, because he'd never heard me sing before.
Sure.
So he actually drove out to Long Island. We went to a friend's house, set up the band, and performed just for him.
Wow.
And, and he says, you know what? I'm really proud of you. You've really come far here in a short amount of time. He says, but you're wearing somebody else's clothes. You need to put on your own clothes.
Interesting.
So I thought, okay, here's the project.
Wow.
Never wrote a song in my life. And so I was at Matty T's one night, and the band, there's a band there and they're blaring in the background, and I'm sitting at a table and I got an idea for a song watching all the line dancers dancing. So that was the first song that I wrote, was Dancing a Line.
Wow.
And and so I wrote out the lyrics, and I'm kind of hearing the melody in my head, and Jim was talking to somebody, and I walked over to him and I said, I think I just wrote a song. And he looked at the lyrics and he says, does it have a bridge? And I said, hold on a second. I went back to the table and I went back to him and I said, I got the bridge.
Wow.
Well, it was not, I wish all songs were that easy. There's another song I wrote too, a little bit later, that was about my grandmother. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was probably my favorite person ever. Not a well-educated, traditionally well-educated, but probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And, really instilled in me the golden rule, which, was really important to her. And now it's really important to me. And just really a lot of fun. Could drink Molson Golden Ale with the best of them, and but was really just funny and fun and sensible and smart, and just a wonderful, wonderful lady. So I have a picture of her sitting on a hen house up in Northern Ontario.
Nice.
When she was growing up.
Nice.
But anyway, so she was a big influence. So I wrote a song about her, and that song woke up in the middle of the night, just had this song going in my head, and just quickly wrote down the lyrics, and, woke up the next morning and cried as I was singing it to Jim. And then we did a recording, and I sent it up to my brother in Toronto, and he listened to it, and he called me up and he says, I cried when I heard that.
Oh, what a great connection.
I said, yeah. I've tried to keep the songwriting going. It's really difficult. I'll just not get any ideas. I had a couple of, we've had some tragedies with all the adventures and everything. We've had some tragedies. When we moved out to Long Island with our son, who was 2 at the time, Jim's mother very suddenly had a stroke and passed away within a week. And this was a couple of months after we had moved out here. So now, we're, very conscious that, Jim's dad is by himself now. Sure. And so we're inviting him over all the time. And then, a couple of years went by, and then my mother died very suddenly, very tragically. And so that threw me for a loop. But we kept the band going, and I think that was kind of, a saving grace factor there, was to keep occupied. And, of course, we had a small son too, so that was a joy. And then, ultimately Jim's dad passed away from a heart attack. And then a couple of years later, my father passed away from a heart attack. It seemed like it was one family and then the other. Those were, especially when our mothers passed away, because it was so sudden, so unexpected, that it really threw us both. But life goes on. And we all have experiences like this, and we all find our way to cope with them and then move on and keep their memories alive. And I feel as though my mother's with me every day, every single day.
And you know what's great about music too? It's so healing in so many different ways, not only for the writer, but for the audience and what they pull out of a song, which may not have been your intention, but they pull things from it. And that's what I love about country music. It's really got a common denominator and very relatable to a broad swath of people. And I think that's great. Hey, I want to do this. I want to talk about the song that our audience heard before we started the podcast, which was Not Far From Here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll take a quick break and we'll regroup.
Sometimes, writing a song has to do with the need for another song. Okay. And that's what happened with Not Far From Here. We were putting together an EP, which is our latest grouping. And we kind of decided we've got 4 songs. We really need another song. And I was talking to my one of my very best friends who I worked at Alice Cooper's management with, and she said, "You need another song." And she had worked for a ton of people in the industry too. After she worked at Alice Cooper, she worked for Kiss.
Wow.
She worked for Barry Manilow, Jorma Kalkinen. I mean, the list goes on, and she's an amazing person. And whenever I need advice, I always ask her, because she's, besides being incredibly smart, she's also very sensible and always has great advice. So she says, "You need another song." So it's like, oh, there was the project, right? The same thing that the booking agent had said to me, you need to do this. So that song happened fairly quickly, actually, and then ultimately became the title track of the grouping of songs.
Wow, amazing. Why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break, and we come back. I want to get your take, because you have all this experience from the ground level up, really from the trenches of the music business when you started and how you see things today. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back, everybody, with Mary Lamont, and we've got really so much more to explore. Hang with us. Are you a singer-songwriter who wants to take your music to the next level, and you need some professional musicians and really that expertise to help you along? Well, check out Melts in Your Ears Studio. It's Mike Nugent's studio. If you like what you've heard here today, Mike's the guy who can make the connections, put the tracks together, and give you a quality product. Check it out. Hey, everybody, we're back with Mary Lamont after that short break. I'm telling you, I got to grab my ears and my head because it's still spinning from your career. And you've had all these connections. I'm going to have my homework ahead of me. By the way, so the audience knows, a lot of people we talk about, I'm going to pop into the chapter mark so you can see who they are and make that connection. And let's talk about connections, how they've come around, and about the music business. Mary, tell me what you got.
connections in the music business.
Yeah. So you were talking during the break about a particular fellow who circled back into your life.
Right. Now, this was really interesting. I got to know the guys in Alice Cooper's band, and one of the band members would come in somewhat frequently, and that was the bass player, Dennis Dunaway, who is a co-writer on many of Alice's big hits, like School's Out, for example. Sure. He would come in with his wife, Cindy Smith Dunaway, who happens to be the sister of Neil Smith, who is the drummer for Alice Cooper. Okay. So they would come in, and they were just the most adorable couple. And I just really liked them a lot. So they would come in here and there, and years later, Dennis, had his own music projects, the Dennis Dunaway Project, and he also has a wonderful band with two original members from Blue Oyster Cult called Blue Coop. Okay. And so he was performing, and my friend Gail, who I worked with in the office, said, "Hey, let's go see Dennis." So we went to see him, and it was just terrific seeing him and Cindy again. And Dennis said, I know you have a country band, and I have this country song that I wrote, and do you think that your band would be interested in performing it? I had to catch my heart, which had just dropped to the floor from shock, that Dennis Dunaway was asking me to sing his composition. Well, it turns out that Dennis, and of course I said yes, had not heard the song. Yes, I'm interested, because I know it's going to be a fabulous song because it's written by Dennis Dunaway. Right. So it turns out, and I didn't know this, that Dennis's whole background of his family was country music. Wow. He had, relatives who were in a country band with pedal steel, and the ladies, the Dunaway sisters, who had a group together. And so this was news to me. So that was really, that was really fun to learn. And so he gave us this song. He had hoped that one of his daughters was going to sing a demo with him playing guitar, but unfortunately she was, I guess, out of town or something. So he ended up singing it himself, just with guitar, and sent us this MP3 of it. And so we took it into the studio and pulled in, a pedal steel and Jim's guitar, bass and drums, and really had fun with it. And we sent it to him, holding our breaths. Yeah, sure. And he loved it. Wow. He said, it's just got the right amount of country twang, and your voice sounds great, and the guitar and steel are fantastic. And, he says, it sounds terrific. So that is also on our...
what's the title of the song, Mary?
What Was Right for You Left Nothing for Me.
Oh, that's great.
So think Alice Cooper country. It's kind of a dark lyric. I really love it. And what I would really love to do sometime is to make a video of that song. Wow. We did one for Not Far From Here. But I think that song would lend itself so nicely to a video. So that's got to be a project at some point.
All right. Hey, well, let's not leave our audience in suspense. You brought that to the table, so let's have them listen to the song right now. And we'll be right back after the song, everybody. Stick with us.
people wondered about what you said. Why did I ever say, go ahead and do what's right for you? Now I'm sorry, 'cause what was right for you left nothing for me. The bedroom floor is covered in shattered glass, and I've sunk into my bottle, and I just don't think I'll last. Why did I ever say, go ahead and do what's right for you? Now I'm angry, 'cause what was right for you left nothing for me. Maybe time will change my mind and you won't seem like such a backstabber. Maybe time will heal my wounds, but for now I'm just getting madder. Would you come see my tombstone if I were dead? I won't be resting peaceful. I'll be lying there seeing red. My tombstone writing's just for you. Man, I hope that you read it and weep. It would say, what was right for you left nothing for me. What was right for you? What was right for you? What was right for you left nothing for me. Nothing for me. No, nothing for me. Nothing for me.
Hey, everybody, we're back with Mary Lamont. My head stopped spinning. That was a great song. Thanks for bringing that to the table.
For a moment.
So when I started the Long Island Sound podcast, I actually got the name from a Billy Joel speech at the recently opening of the Long Island Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame, which has been around for a long time, but now they have a physical location. And years ago,
I've been there. Wonderful.
oh, it's great. And
Yeah.
Billy Joel did a speech back in the day where he said, the Long Island Sound is more than a body of water that separates Connecticut from Long Island. And a light bulb went over my head, and that's where I grabbed the name. But what I really wanted to explore with you, Mary, is I'm really excited about WUSB, that's the Stony Brook station, and they are so supportive of original music on Long Island, which I think is a rarity. And we need more people like you and that type of station to, really promote the wellspring of talent that we have here.
That's part of the fun of being part of WUSB, because there are so many different genres they cover. I mean, anybody can find a show on WUSB who will be playing the type of music that they like. And you can't really say that about many other stations. And as you say, too, the support of local talent. Usually in pretty much every show, I'm featuring somebody who is doing original music, either on Long Island or in New York City. In fact, I'm just now featuring somebody who contacted me from Massachusetts, and very talented multi-instrumentalist. And so I'm going to feature him on the next show. But yeah, I mean, we take pride in that, and there's so much talent here on Long Island. After 225 shows, I'm still finding great stuff to
yeah,
on
it's
the
amazing.
show.
And, we include geographical Long Island, Brooklyn, and Queens in the mix. And I tell you, over the past year on this podcast, it kind of blew me away. They found me, a bluegrass band who is in Brooklyn. And, they're called Damn Tall Buildings, and they're from Montana, Philly, and New Hampshire. And for some reason, they settled in Brooklyn, the center of the world, as they would call it today. And that kind of it took me back. I'm like, wow, there's just so much here. There's just a potpourri of tell me what you like, and we'll find a band or a venue that's going to support it. And yet, on the other hand, I guess one of my laments is that I wish there were more venues that were supportive of original music. My friend Mike Nugent says, hey, it's the time of the tribute band, and that has its place. You got to market, you got to bring in, sell tickets and beer and food and stuff. But I wish there were more. I just wish there were more places like Katie's of Smithtown and Bartini and Babylon and some of the larger venues,
Yeah, there are not enough places, but at the same time, sometimes it's difficult to get people to come out for original music. Whereas with a tribute band, you know exactly what you're going to get. You know the material, and somebody's practiced very hard. And some of these tribute bands are pretty amazing. But I love that I have the opportunity to promote other original artists on Long Island, because people need to hear it. And maybe if they hear it on the radio, they'll go see them live.
Exactly. And so much has changed. For an artist to make money, they've got to go and do gigs, They're not making it selling their music. It's on Spotify. Unless you get millions of streams, you're really not seeing that income.
Right. $5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I got a $5 check from 2 years ago. Yeah. But I think that's one of the things, and this is self-touting my platform here, is the Long Island Sound podcast gives another platform for people to expose their music. And it solves my curiosity. Every time I've seen somebody live, what's come into my mind is, what's her story? What's his story? How did they get into it? And I'm still fascinated by your story. I mean, we could do like five podcasts, Mary. It's just
everybody's got a cool story.
So I got to ask you this, back to the songwriting. Is it all on your shoulders for your band? Like, are you? Oh, okay.
Not at all. I mean, my husband has been so, for lack of a better pun, instrumental in in putting this band together, in encouraging me to be the head of the band, in the guitar work that he does, in the riffs that he plays around the house that inspire me to write music. Wow. From what he's doing, and he'll just play something over and over again, and suddenly it'll sound like something to me. I'll come up with a few words and then expand on that. So he has clearly been very instrumental in every aspect of it. If it weren't for, it should be called the Jim Marchese Band, because it's really all of his doing. And as far as, I feel like I've I'm sort of on a mission here, I guess, on a mission at WUSB to, to introduce people to music maybe that they've never heard, whether it's new stuff on the Americana charts or a local artist who's just up and coming, to, performing with my band, to give people some entertainment. With people have problems and they want to forget about them for a while. And I feel that's my job to make them laugh, make them tap their foot to some pleasant music for an hour and a half or whatever. We actually enjoy doing libraries. We do a lot of library shows. It's a sit down listening audience, and we just really have a lot of fun with it. And people have told me, you're a real entertainer. I just get up there and tell stories. I mean, just like we're doing here now. But I think maybe somebody might find this amusing or make a connection or entertaining. Yeah. So it's really fun. It's a drag at the end of the show because it's over. Then you had to break down all the equipment and put it back. Exactly. We're our own roadies.
But you hit on something, Mary, and couple things I'm getting from this episode. One, and it's a common denominator in a lot of the interviews I've had with artists, and those people in their lives that were encouraging to say, hey, you can do this, is so important in that. And the other thing is being a good storyteller. If you look at the successful artists or artists that I love or the artists that people love, there's that thread of storytelling, the John Prine, the Johnny Cash aspect of telling a story that's relatable and you can make it your own through music, I think is kind of magical. The other thing I want to touch on, and I look back at this past year as we're winding the year down, one of my great memories was the 45th anniversary concert that WUSB did at the Stony Brook Theater. And I tell you, a handful of my guests were on stage, and it was great to see them in front, not in a bar where I typically see them or a festival, but in a concert hall. And everyone from, Peter Mancini to Rory Kelly, and it was just fantastic.
All that.
Yeah, it was like a family reunion. Is my impression.
When you said on a stage, what suddenly came to mind is something I left out, which is major for us at the time. Back at the beginning of this century, we got a phone call out of the blue and my husband picked up the phone, and there's this woman speaking with a very heavy Asian accent.
Oh, right.
And at first, he thought it was a wrong number. And then in the middle of all the Asian accent, which he wasn't really understanding very well, he heard my name. And he said, wait a minute, are you looking for a band? And she says, yes, we're looking for the band. We want Mary Lamont Band.
Wow.
And she started to tell him about this foundation, which at the time was promoting goodwill between China and the United States. And we would like the band to come to China and perform in China. So we thought, well, this is really out of left field. I mean, we've gone through Alice Cooper, Bruce Springsteen, and else. Now China wants us to bring the band over. So we ended up going to China. We were over there for a little over 2 weeks. We crisscrossed through the country, playing in various large venues. We started out playing in like a Hilton hotel that had a massive room, like a banquet hall room, with dignitaries from different countries. And then the next day we were out on a stage in the middle of the town square with thousands of people. And then we end up in Beijing and we perform at the Forbidden City Concert Hall. And they said, "Oh, you will like this place, like Lincoln Center."
Oh my.
And it was like Lincoln Center. And so, so I said, I have to make this work. I have to really, make this a show. And we just had a ball with it. And played and crisscrossed, like I said, all over the country. I think we took 10 planes in 16 days or something. And they just treated us like royalty. And I turned to Jim and I said, "Who do they think we are?"
That's amazing.
Let's just roll with it. And so we really had fun. And the people there were so wonderful. They were very receptive. And, and at first they warned us, they may not,
React.
clap or anything, react much. They reacted like they were up on their feet, clapping their hands and everything. And before I went over there, they said, "Can you learn a song in Chinese? We will." When they hooked me up with a guy who was a Chinese interpreter at the United Nations, and he helped me with, they spelled the words out phonetically, told me what the song was about. And it was actually a hit in China, like a very popular folk song. And so the guy from the UN helped me to, pronounce the words correctly. And I went over and sang in the middle of the concert. I'd sing this song in Chinese.
Wow.
And they went nuts.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really fun. I've sung it actually at a couple of concerts here on Long Island too, just throw in a few bars, just for the fun of it.
I gotta get an MP3 of that, because my daughter Faith took Chinese. She took Chinese at Scranton University, and she's fluent.
I might actually have an MP3 of the artist Kujan, I think is how you pronounce his name, who had the big hit with it.
That'd be neat. I'd really neat to hear that. Okay, so before my head was stop spinning, now my head's spinning again, because I do remember I have China written down right in my notes here, so I'm glad.
Forgot about China.
It's a small little place, but man, what a life experience. That's really phenomenal. It's amazing. Hey, let's do this.
Yeah,
let's talk about It Filled Her Mind. Tell me about that. And
It Filled Her Mind. Yeah, that was the we also call that the grandma song. That was the song that was inspired by my grandmother, who inspired me so much and really made me the person I am today. I can almost hear her talking when I'm talking, and that's part of the nice thing about, one of the nice things about getting older. Some of it's not so nice, but, one of the nice things that I'm finding is I look in the mirror and I see my mother. And that's not only nice, there's a sense of comfort about it too, because, somebody that you would love to still have around. Like I would love her to see our son's daughter, I'm a grandma.
I'm sure she does in a different way, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but yeah. So yeah, they're with us all the time. And that is really a source of daily happiness. Like I'll think about something they said and laugh.
Wonderful. That's great. And now you have a tribute song to her, which is great. So I'm sure every time you sing it, it makes the memories fresh again.
And now I just got an idea for a song for our 2-year-old granddaughter.
Just this moment?
It's a little.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, not this moment. Just a couple days ago. Just a couple days ago. It just reminded me. I have to get on that. So, when she gets a little bit older, she'll have a song that was written
Wonderful.
about her.
All right. let's check out the song, It Filled Her Mind. Got that right, correct?
It filled
It filled
up her
up
mind.
her mind. Be right back after the song. Enjoy, everyone.
She had several suitors, but she always said no. The one that she loved was in heaven, we know. She knew that she'd never find another so fine. So she lived in the memory and it filled up her mind. She remembered the magic that both of them shared. The wedding, the baby, how much they both cared. A love that was truer and finer than fine. And she loved him completely and it filled up her mind. Filling her thinking with all the good things of his leaving so young, and the sadness it brings. Someday she knew that she'd see him again, and they'd be together like they've always been. And the music box dancers that he gave her one day are next to the records that they used to play. And the dancers twirl around and the music's sublime. She remembered their dancing and it filled up her mind. Leaving so young, and the sadness it brings. Someday she knew that she'd see him again, and they'd be together like they've always been. Well, she had several suitors, but she always said no. The one that she loved was in heaven, we know. She knew that she'd never find another so fine. So she lived in the memory and it filled up her mind. She knew that she'd never find another so fine. So she lived in the memory and it filled up her mind. Yeah, she lived in the memory and it filled up her mind.
Hey, everybody, we're back with Mary Lamont. We just came back from China, and just amazing how things come your way, Mary. Just amazing stuff, amazing stories. Got to have you back on the program for sure, Mary. So,
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Steve. This is really fun.
So every other Sunday at noontime, I believe, is your show.
From noon to 1, it's Down Home Country. And then if you tune in on a week when I'm not when I'm not broadcasting, it will be the wonderful Gene Casey, another musician here on Long Island, who has just started doing the alternate weeks of Down Home Country back in the summer. And he just jumped right in and took to it like a fish to water. So I'm absolutely thrilled that he's my partner in crime at Down Home Country on WUSB.
Yes, 90.1. So no matter, and you could get it online, obviously, as
yes, WUSB.FM.
So there won't be a wrong Sunday to hit the show. Either you'll get Mary or you'll get Gene. So
we have a fun time with it.
Absolutely. Mary, it was really, honestly, my pleasure to chat with you today. I've learned so much about your career. I love your music. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a friend who told me, said, Steve, we can account for what's in the bank and what we own. We can never account for the time we have left. And the fact that you gave me your time today was a real blessing. So I thank you for that.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.